Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my final review in my Stanley Kubrick series. I've reviewed every film so far except this one, and that film is Spartacus, released in 1960, same year as Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. This film is a bit of an anomaly on Kubrick's CV because it's actually a film that he's all but disowned, really. Yeah, he had a bit of a troubled production on this, and it's the only film on which he has a name as director in which he didn't have full control. He came onto this replacing director Anthony Mann. Now, Kirk Douglas, who stars as Spartacus, he was the producer on this, and he had the power to essentially fire Anthony Mann, which is what he did. Thought he was maybe not strong enough to handle the cast, at least that's what he said in later years. How much truth can be gleaned from anything that Douglas actually said over the years, I have no idea, because there's multiple stories and a lot of people kind of saying different things either way. But suffice to say, Kubrick is not, or wasn't, a man to go into anything lightly, and certainly to walk out of a fight or back down from a fight, as Douglas found out on the set. The two of them were at loggerheads for much of the making of this film, and I think that just comes out of the fact that both of these men were really strong-headed, had their own ideas about how to do things. And at the end of the day, I think it makes a pretty good film. For anyone who hasn't seen Spartacus, it is about this slave, played by Kirk Douglas, as I say, who leads a revolt against his slave owners, against the Roman soldiers, starts recruiting slaves all across Rome. It's based on a true story, something I didn't know going into this. I always assumed Spartacus was just a made-up story, but it's not. It's actually based on truth. Now, obviously, this being Hollywood, much of the true story has been changed. By all accounts, Spartacus died on the battlefield against Crassus, and never actually came face to face with him. So, like I say, Hollywood movie, you've got to have that ending, you've got to have that showdown. It's a good film. I really like it. It does have certain elements that you don't expect to see in a Kubrick film. There's definitely a fair amount of sentimentality that kind of pops up throughout it, particularly with regards to the central love story between Spartacus and this other slave girl. That doesn't feel very Kubrick to me personally, but on the other hand, there is much in here, particularly the way the film is shot, that does feel very Kubrickian. You look at the battle sequences, they're absolutely astounding. You know, you look at what Kubrick does with just filling out the screen with extras. Today that would all be CGI. So to watch this and see that actually that's all people, that's genuine, real people, it's an incredible thing to behold, to look at. It gives that physicality to it that you don't get with modern day films. You know, no matter how good the CGI is, you do find yourself looking at it and knowing, that it's CGI, you know it's not real. There's one particular scene actually, just when all the slaves are led a revolt, and they've kind of garnered a load of followers, and they're all running down this hill, and it looks like a termite mound or an ant hill. It literally looks like loads of ants running down this hill, and you do this double take, and you're looking closely at the screen like that. They're real people. So yeah, really impressed with the visuals and what Kubrick was able to accomplish on that front. Obviously, he pretty much disavowed this film because he didn't have that control. At the end of the day, it's still a good film. I still like the main story of this character, Spartacus. I do think Kubrick was right in his criticisms of the main character, in that he doesn't really have many weaknesses. He's not a particularly flawed character. Now there is a moment, a gladiatorial moment that kind of kickstarts a lot of this stuff off when he does lose a fight. You know, so there is that. He's not, in that sense, he doesn't always win. But I get what Kubrick was, you know, where he was coming from a moral standpoint, from the way this guy thinks and acts. He doesn't seem to have that many flaws. Particular standouts for me on the performance side of things in his film are Sir Laurence Olivier, probably pretty much a given, I guess, and Peter Ustinov. Ustinov really infuses his character here with a lot of humour and in many ways a lot of warmth, a lot of depth. I think this character on the page could really just come across as nothing more than comic relief, but in a kind of sleazy sort of way. But I do think he adds a bit of humanity to the character in places. And I just really love his performance. I watched the extended cut of this film. I saw the theatrical cut way back when I was a teenager, so I honestly couldn't compare them. So for the sake of this review, just being upfront, it is the extended cut that was released to Blu-ray that I'm reviewing here. Now, one scene that I do know was cut from the theatrical cut is a particular scene involving Laurence Olivier's character and Tony Curtis's character, in which there's this real homosexual subtext. And I wasn't expecting it. You know, for the period, obviously it got cut out, so I was right in thinking this isn't something that would have made the film back in the day. So yeah, I'm just sat there watching this scene, and then Olivier's character just starts waffling on about the difference between oysters and whatever else it was. But all of a sudden I twig, hang on a sec, he's giving him the come on. This is like major homosexual kind of subtext. So yeah, it was refreshing to see that, I guess, from a film from 1960, you know what I mean? Like I say, it didn't make the cut back then, but hey ho, there you go. But you know, that was culturally relevant to the Roman period, you know, like, whereas today I think a lot of that stuff gets shoehorned into movies with like social justice warrior movements and all that kind of stuff, which does grate on my nerves. But when you look at, you know, the culture of which this film is portraying, the Roman culture, this you know, this existed to quite a large degree amongst Roman officials and whatnot. So I like that they go there with this. I think a lot of the credit for that can be attributed to Dalton Trumbo, the screenwriter. So this is a guy who was blacklisted. There was a film made about him recently. I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, he was blacklisted as a communist. You know, he out and out admitted that he was a communist supporter, but he's arguably one of the greatest writers of the period, certainly of those who were blacklisted. And he's got an amazing number of credits to his name with regards to films that he's written. I do think, yeah, his screenplay here is pretty great. I can see, again, it's that Kirk Douglas element. You know, Kirk Douglas clearly had some ego, I think, and wanted it to primarily be a hero story about Spartacus and about his people. I mean, Douglas was a Zionist, so he wanted it to reflect that side of things and relate to his people, so to speak. Trumbo, however, was more interested in making something of a social commentary on what was going on at the time with the communist witch hunts and things like that. Obviously something he felt very kind of affected by, given his status. But yeah, so you know, three very strong minds, Kubrick, Douglas and Trumbo, all really vying and fighting to pull the film this way and that. So yeah, I think that kind of becomes one of its strengths, really. This film's incredibly violent as well, given the time. Again, I am seeing the extended cut, and I know a lot of these scenes were cut out upon its original release. So there's some shots in which body parts are being dismembered. Bearing in mind this is a PG, You know, I don't know if they got this film recertified when they released it on Blu-ray or whatever, but it surprises me that it gets away with that PG rating. So you do see limbs cut off. Yeah, there's a few other bits in here as well that it's quite shocking, really, given the period. You can see how this film led to the kind of battle violence you saw in the likes of Braveheart and Gladiator. You know, I think a lot of this stuff does get attributed to Braveheart, but actually, yeah, you know, Kubrick again, really selling it way back when, and yeah, trailblazing as per usual. It's a shame that he kind of did want to really distance himself from this film, because he is responsible as well for a lot of the cinematography here. So much so, in fact, that original cinematographer wanted his name taken off the picture. He wanted his name removed. Unfortunately for him, he was nominated for an Oscar. So I don't know how much that changed things for him after the fact, but yeah, he had a few beefs with Kubrick. Again, it's that strong personality. Now, a lot of people will argue, you know, Kubrick fans. I think I've heard a lot of Kubrick fans argue that. Well, I think they downplay Kubrick's involvement in this film. That, you know, because he didn't have as much control as he normally has, he kind of just became director for hire. And I don't believe that for a second, because I don't believe that it's in Kubrick's nature. I don't think he's that guy. He's too strong of a personality, and he will fight for things. Now, obviously, Douglas was also a very, you know, strong presence with regards to the decisions that were being made. But at the end of the day, as I say, Kubrick took control of the photography, like, completely. You know, so much so, as I say, that he pissed off his DP, and that's just his personality. He's going to do that. He's going to take over things, and he's going to do it his way. So yeah, this is definitely a Kubrick film, but like I say, it's not pure Kubrick in that sense, because he has had complete control over every other one of his films. I do think it's fantastic, though. I do think it's one of the best films of the 60s. Yeah, I'm glad that Kubrick didn't walk despite the troubles, because it's one of the best, you know, sword and sandals epics that has ever been made, in my mind. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. I think it's fantastic, but I want to know what you thought. Have you seen Spartacus? If not, I don't know what you're doing. You know, it's pretty old by now. You should have seen it. But yeah, tell me what you thought about it. Leave your thoughts down below, let me know, and until next time, crack it.